All right, 9 a.m. Sunday. How's everybody doing? Kick this thing off. Hey, Iris.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. I feel bad for you guys because I feel like you guys would have partied last night and you woke up to us.
Well, nice to have everyone here. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us, Iris.
No, thank you. Thank you guys for coming up.
Yep. So Cooper Helfet, we're with a company named Amperity. We're a customer data platform out of Seattle. We're a consumer data platform for some of the biggest consumer brands, so Home Depot, Starbucks, Alaska Airlines. Getting into the sports vertical, so excited to have this chat. Also exciting for me to come full circle. I actually spent 4 years playing for the Seahawks and 2 years for the Raiders on the field. And I was always so appreciative for our front office that got butts and seats every game and made those games so much more compelling and exciting for us on the field. So I am in debt to people like you that have done the work to get fans in the stadium. So with that, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Cooper. So good morning, everybody. I'm Iris Diaz. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for the Dallas Mavericks. I've been with the company for 4 years. They speak in seasons, which is so weird for me. I'm like, no, it's 4 years. I'm like, it's 4 seasons. Well, it's been 4 seasons. So fun ride, different ride. Obviously, my term was really good during COVID, which is very weird because you don't have a playbook for any of that. So I'm excited to be here and talk to you guys and, of course, share any information. But before that, I've been 15 years in media. I used to work for iHeartMedia. I used to work globally. I think every company I worked for is in Dallas. Dallas Morning News, obviously local print. Diaz, Spanish newspaper, iHeartMedia, 49 cities. And I used to work for the Richards Group, so an agency. So agency lifestyle is very different, but I was recommend people to build an agency first before you get into sports. And then now I'm here.
All right, well, maybe kicking things off, what was it like transitioning into sports? So for first few years in sports, what's the transition been like?
Well, this is what I'm going to say. If you want to get into sports, anybody, and I think this is where I know, and especially with high schoolers, that they just think that we're just brushing shoulders against players. That is not even the problem. We hardly even see them. And I think you probably would know. But the biggest thing, we're always on the business side trying to drive fans over to butts and seats. Our goal is to make sure people are watching or tuning in or showing up. Tuning in or showing up, that is our major thing. That's where we plug in every single year. But I think from an agency side, and the reason I say agency, I'm sure you guys work with agency too, at least from the list I saw, that it's very disciplined. An agency is very disciplined when it comes to a brand director, brand manager, that you're working on a brand. You have to start that sucker from A to Z. And if you miss a spot, it'll stick out. And when you come to the sports side, it's chaos. You have to be on your A game all the time. We were just talking about this a few days ago. It's like the people that don't bring or pull their own weight around the office, they stick out so much. So I think from the sports side, I know the pandemic was, everyone had to be agile and quick. We were trained to be that way because you never know what's going to happen on the court, off the court, or on turf, and off the turf. But we have to manage everything. Our players are our golden ticket for everything. We want to make sure that we show up for them. And of course, most importantly, our fans. I know that sounds cheesy, but man, one of my favorite quotes from our owner is, I don't own the team, the fans own the team. And we work that way day in, day out with every marketing campaign. Everything that we think of for our fans is really for them.
I love it. On that note, we talked about it a little bit, but so interesting hearing so many retail brands this weekend that really are in control of the story all the time, right? They're telling a consistent story that they want to engage with their fans, or their consumers in that case. For you, you have to be so agile and nimble to obviously telling this continuous story, but the season changes, right? And the storyline changes, the messages change. So how do you try and stay nimble internally and react to the messages, while trying to keep this consistent storyline?
Yeah, so that is always something that we're always working on, honestly, every single season. But for me, I think it's more important to make sure that we're also telling the story for a season ticket holders that have been there forever. If it's not broke, don't fix it. There's things that we do so old school that it works. And it works because that is what they're used to. You have print ads going out. Normally, not a lot of people still do print, but we do. We do print all year round. But we also make sure that we stay on top of it, especially from the social side. like Cooper said, our story changes every single day. We don't know what Luka's going to do last night or today or tomorrow. We don't know when JB's going to show up, Dodo's going to shoot a three-pointer and win that game like last Sunday or Saturday. But for us, we have to tell that story to make sure that we tell the story of our players first. Our brand is next to them and our brand is connected to them. So we always have to stay on top. And at the end of it, you have several things to talk about that they're not always going to be the same. And while some are very traditional where, oh, this quarter we're going to shoot this campaign, that's great and all. And trust me, coming from agency, that's what we do. Hey, Christmas promos, great. We have Christmas promos. Not us. We have Christmas, we have community, we have events, we have our sponsorship, we have every single story to try to tell, and so many. And the attention span that a fan is actually consuming, we have to always constantly be talking to them. And it's always something different. So we don't look at data the way that every other company looks at data. Our data is great. We have new season ticket holders. Now we're encouraging more Latinos, more African Americans, more whatever to be part of this fan at the arena, at the end of it. We're talking about the story, but we're also introducing new stories throughout the day with different things that are happening. We're at the St. Patrick's Day Parade yesterday. Dirk was there. So then that's a story on its own. Then we're volunteering at a school, then we're telling that story. So we're constantly telling stories and they're not always aligning, but they get putting line for the values of the company.
I love it. With that in mind, this kind of shifting dynamic, which consumer segments today or fan segments today are you really focused on and driving towards or trying to engage and capture?
Oh, God, for that. So we actually started that 2 years ago, and especially because of the pandemic, that really taught us that we couldn't get all the content that we wanted, especially for our players. We always have this day, I'm sure you're very aware, media day that happens right before the season starts, where we get all the content with our players, and we're videotaping everybody. We want to make sure that, hey, make sure you talk about Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, all these different segments that we actually run in game, and of course on our content. But for us, it's really important to start advertising to our Gen Z audience. That's why if you follow any of our social media and you pay attention, a lot of our videos aren't as long as they used to be. And some do stay to 2-minute highlights on YouTube, but on social, on Instagram, specifically on TikTok, and of course everyone's now on TikTok mode. I'm a sucker for that at 1 in the morning when I can't sleep. But to me, it's very important to really tell that story in a very short attention span. You're not reading that copy anymore like you used to. You're not reading the newspaper like you used to. This Gen Z audience is like, in 10 seconds, if you didn't tell them or you didn't show them something important, and even less than that now, they're not following you anymore. So we want to make sure that we're always targeting her. If we're doing something for Luka, for example, if we're talking about something we did in his hometown, that's a story on its own. And we want to make sure that even if it's Luka just in regular clothes and he's not wearing a mask, it's still direct contact to our brand. So it is important to make sure that we're always targeting the Gen Z fans now. All our stuff started being animated. We couldn't have access to our players. So we're like, okay, well, let's start animating them and start doing cartoon sizes for them. Start doing stickers, start doing something that's very downloadable, something that's digestible for a fan that's only looking at stuff for 5 seconds. It's constantly moving where we're always having these ideas. Some of them are great, but we just don't have the time. But it really is the Gen Z audience. Those are the ones that are really following our players, which indirectly are also following our fans. Our brand, sorry, not the fans.
No, I love it. And when you think about, going back to something you mentioned earlier on the data side of things, how do you think about kind of the prioritization efforts around, I'm looking at all these different consumer segments. You look at something like fan lifetime value, for example, to say, hey, how do we look at this consumer segment? What's the value of this consumer segment related, or this fan segment related to this fan segment? How do we prioritize accordingly? Does that come into play with the
Yes and no. Okay. Yes, it does, but no, it doesn't. Let me tell you why. We are moving fast. I feel like it's a race. Once the schedule releases, once we start our first home game, we're nonstop. So while in the moment it's important, it is important. And it's funny, we were just talking about this. It's like we touch so many columns and so many rows and so many segments that I don't feel we do enough yet. So I think that's something we are working on in the sense of while it is a priority, it is something that we need to do more of when we focus on one segment, because we're in everything. When I say we're in everything, we're helping charities, we're donating to foundations, we're always searching, we're always communicating to our fans. We're on, I'm blanking, but there's so many things that we're always on, sponsoring items, showing up to events, showing up to these, like I said, the parade yesterday. That we're always trying to target the fan, that we try to do it almost like you're dropping crumbles here and there. We're not doing it as a campaign as we used to with 6 weeks, 7 weeks of anticipation. It's throughout the season. What is it that we can do to leave these crumbles behind to see if anyone attaches? And if something doesn't go right, that's the beauty of what we do, is that if it didn't work, then it didn't work. Let's just do something else. But let's try it first before we say no to it. Because you never know. There's so many things that have worked in the past for us and it didn't work, or things that have worked, and then things that don't work, which is fine, that we don't get penalized for it, but at least we said we tried. So that is the other thing, is we're always trying new things, and we're trying to do old school stuff too at the same time, which is why I say it is a priority, but then it's not a priority also. We've noticed that we've gotten so many younger fans because of the players that is our focus, to make sure that we're always giving something away at the arena. I think I said that yesterday.
I love it. I love it. And for those of you that don't know, Iris and her team are incredibly humble. The Mavericks are top 5 in attendance in the NBA, 3-4 years running, right around the time you joined. So pretty darn impressive. What do you attribute that towards?
I mean, I'm not gonna be negative about it, but I think it's also, I mentioned something yesterday. It's also everything that we're doing in the community. And I know we keep saying that, but we have, I wouldn't be surprised if we had 1,000 things that we did every single year, because we do. There's always something that we have very heavy months. So we're always supporting children, schools, showing up to concerts, showing up to just different foundations that we support. But I think it's also behind not only what we do on that's how we, 2 things. We do worry about our players. We want to make sure that we're focused and making sure that we're telling their story, to make sure, give them some humanality behind everything, and not just Cooper, not just Cooper, the Seahawks player, but actual Cooper, and telling you the story about where he grew up and what he did. But it's also about the fan that's been there for a long time. How do you still entertain someone that's been there for 30 years? And you start bringing these different animations that they're like, yeah, okay, that's cool, but that's not their audience. That's great. I have 30,000 people over here that are waiting to be in line to come buy a ticket as well, which is great. But I think a lot of it, we're not naive to the fact that obviously it's due to our players. So we want to make sure that we're humanizing them and giving them some fun stories to follow on social media, and then also to be able to give everyone, every fan that's coming to the arena, a great experience, that they forgot that there was a loss. Our in-game director told me once, and I love what he said. He said, my goal is to make sure that people have, they forgot to cut, they came to a basketball game. They're here just to be entertained, and that's what they're coming for. We want to make sure that it's a family-oriented place, that is the place to go to, that is an affordable ticket to come to. But it's also something fun. It's also something local here in Dallas, and that's really what we strive for. But like I said, our goal is always butts and seats and tune in. If you're not at the game, please tune in. Make sure that you're tuning in. So I think it's a piece of everything, and everything that we do, and every department that we work on. But it's not just the players, but definitely us, from just pushing the brand and making sure people know that they are well entertained, especially when they're coming to the arena.
It's really interesting thinking about kind of weaving in the player stories. What segments are really tuning into the player stories versus, to your point, 30-year-long, lifelong fans that have just been following the team for so long, but they're just more interested in team dynamics and team messaging. Do you notice you index into one channel for team kind of messaging and outreach in that fan segment versus the fans that are just really focused on Luka or a single player? Like, do those channel strategies change between those?
They're consistent. So they don't change in the sense of these are the people that are watching TV commercials, that are buying the ticket, that are clicking through the display ad, buying the ticket, that are picking up the Dallas Morning News and buying a ticket from the ad there. So those are the season ticket holders. Then you have the TikTokers of the world that you just need some ticket pre-roll before a YouTube channel and they're buying a ticket. So Our strategy changes based on the audience for sure, just like everybody else. But it doesn't, the one thing that we did stop doing is buying a lot of media, a lot of TV, linear media, TV. We don't do that as much because we noticed that a lot of people are really buying from display ads. They're not buying whatever we can access them through their cell phone, like Pearl's on her phone right now. Is if I can get her right now to buy a ticket on her phone, exactly. I am going to do that because everyone's on that sucker every single day. I am too. I'm looking at news. I'm watching. I'm staying up to date. What is it that we can do differently? It's not TV anymore. It's not as print anymore, but those are still important for our season ticket holders. So while we shift a little bit, we shift more for the younger side, not so much for our crowd that's been there for a long time because it's still working. So there's obviously something there, so we don't want to mess with it until we need to.
I love it. I love it. But we have time for one more. You're guiding me right here.
Go for it. Go for it.
All right.
We're gonna open up for Q&A. Go for it.
Last one, open up Q&A. Humble, also incredibly innovative. Iris mentioned yesterday you're leading into some NFT work. Do you want to let the team here know how you're kind of thinking about that market and how you can leverage it?
Sure. So we have quite a few teams that have started with their NFT. They actually started selling it. This year, this is a project we've been working on, and it was, hey, how do we encourage people to come to see? It's part of the strategy is, how do I get Pearl to come to a game and not to be watching it at home? Hey, guess what? If you scan your ticket, you get a free NFT. We're not selling them anymore. We're not educating people on NFTs. We're not educating on crypto. Obviously, your owners very, very well versed on all of it. But it's how do I get you to a game and start talking about something out of basketball that is still directed back to our brand. So you show up like, hey, what's this NFT? Yeah, it's a legend. We're doing a lot of our legend players. We have 80s, 90s, and 2000s right now, but it's collections. And what we're doing is making sure, hey, if you have all 40, you get something at the end. It's a reward at the end because you came to all the games. Is it maybe playoff tickets for playoffs? Or is it merch credit to come buy some merchandise? Or is it more tickets for next year? But for us, it's really to start getting into that realm of NFTs. But you're getting them for free. So if anybody is going to a Mavs game, you will get an NFT if you scan your ticket. That is guaranteed. You go to mavscollectibles.com that tells you all that information. But it really is something different because now you're creating a different audience that we weren't expecting, that they don't have nothing to do with basketball. They could care less about Luka, and that's true. But they want that NFT, so they're coming to a game. So that is another audience that we're also trying to bring into. We have it. We're cleaning up all the kinks this year. We ran into quite a few things that we knew that we need to fix, but I think we're really good we're in a good space for next year. But we have a lot of ideas we want to do, especially for playoffs. So that is the area that we're tempering to right now.
I love it. I love it. Well, excited for next season. It's gonna be awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. So I heard this vicious rumor. We have time for probably one question, but I'll come over here. And you mind if I do ladies first?
Absolutely.
Awesome. There you go.
That's the way it works.
Thank you, Cooper and Iris, for chatting. My name is Colleen. I work at the Washington Post, and I work on with the Next Generation Initiative there. And I'm shocked to know the similarities between season ticket holders and subscribers. And I'm kind of curious, if Gen Z is all about building brand identity, what about that like millennial, super millennial, and middle ground? Is there like a strategy trying to turn that into a season ticket holder? And if so, have you seen anything work yet along that kind of path to the end goal of getting them?
You know what we noticed too, and I don't understand why though. People would rather spend more money on single game tickets than become a season ticket holder. And we have many plans starting at 10 games. That's every game. And that's every team that has different plans. But they would rather spend more money on single game tickets. Like, no, I just don't want to be locked out. I don't want to be like, well, you get to choose the games you want to come to. But I don't understand why you would rather spend more money than you save, but I think it's just the lockdown. They're not ones to want to get locked down to 10 games. They just want to come to a game whenever they feel like it. And then you have the Gen Zers who's like, I'll show up, I'll be there, which is so different. But I don't think there's a solve or like this equation or strategy for it. It's just like, hey man, you're showing up. Or you're watching the game there, you appreciate it. Or you're coming to the watch party, great. If you're just coming just for the entertainment, just come. That there's not a solution or a strategy for it. But it's like if we convert them, great. If they become season ticket holders, then we have a team of 30
salespeople that if they saw, hey, she came to Washington, she came to a game, maybe she'll come to the one when we're playing Washington and they'll call you. So there is a strategy when it comes to selling you from a marketing side. We hope you're still watching and you're still buying our merchandise and you're following our social platforms. If you followed us, that's already a win for us too. It's however you want to talk about our product, we accept it.
Millennials with commitment.
Please straight up.
All right, let's squeeze in one. I'm an airline person. We are not supposed to leave late.
But you always do. You're talking about all the tactical issues. I have a quick question on your cover, right? If Jim Dolan goes into Madison Square Garden, he gets booed and fans yell at him. Dan Snyder down in Washington has his own issues. You have one of the biggest cheerleaders in all of sports in terms of Mark Cooper, right? And he's always talking about the Mavs on Shark Tank, et cetera, et cetera. How important is that from an air cover standpoint for your community and your overall marketing of the team?
I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. It's like if you're talking about it, right? If you're talking, there's always. I hate to relate to our owners sometimes because I notice that they're excusing me a lot, but it's good and bad. It's good because our brand is out there, but it's bad because we get the calls too. So, but I think it's that. It's like if you're talking, it's very important. It's very important to make sure that even our MCs, our radio people are still talking and invested into our brand because at the end of it, they're still directed somehow. They're not playing, they're not official employees. The Pearl might be talking about Matt, sorry, Pearl, because you're the first one here. But it is important to still keep talking about it. Our biggest thing is if you're consuming it, however you want to consume our brand, whether it's watching it, whether it's a sticker or a bumper sticker that you're driving down, you're still part of us somehow. So it is truly important because we also, like I said, we don't want to move along with a strategy that really works for us because it is we celebrated 75 years this year in NBA, but as a team, we're 82, so we're 21. Let's do the math. 22, 40 years. But there's so many people that still love the Mavs because of players that played 30 years ago that are fans because of that. Not even because of our owner, not even because of Luka, KP, whoever, THJ, none of that. They are still fans because of what the brand represents. And that is the biggest thing, which is why we're doing so much every single year to try to touch so many fans. It's just be involved. So it is very important.
Give me the microphone back, smart ass. Give it up for Iris and Cooper.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody.